Here's a detailed overview of Russian Defense Minister Andrei Belousov. Here's a detailed account of Andrei Belousov's early life and family background. Early life: date of birth: March 17th, 1959. Place of birth: Moscow, Russian. SFSR, Soviet Union. Grew up in an intellectual and academic environment during the Soviet era. His upbringing was deeply influenced by the ideological and economic currents of the time. Family background: father, Rem Belousov. Prominent Soviet economist, he worked at Gosplan, State Planning Committee, and was involved in planning and economic modeling during the 1960s and 70s. Known for being part of the Kosygin reform movement, which aimed to decentralize some aspects of Soviet economic planning. Rem Belousov's legacy is linked to the scientific wing of the Soviet economic bureaucracy. His influence on Andrei was significant, both in intellectual formation and career direction. Mother. Name not publicly known. A radiochemist, specialized in the study of radioactive elements and chemical processes, likely contributing to Soviet research in science and technology, described as meticulous, reserved, and highly educated. Sibling. Dmitry Belousov, born 1972, is also an economist. He has worked as a researcher and director at Russian economic forecasting institutions, e.g., the Center for Macroeconomic Analysis and Short-Term Forecasting. Like Andrei, Dmitry is considered a capable technocrat and adheres to structured, state-oriented economic thinking. Intellectual environment. The Belousov household was steeped in science, policy, and economic theory. Andrei's early exposure to discussions on economics and governance likely shaped his data-driven, methodical worldview, which became a hallmark of his later government service. Fun fact: his first name, Andrei, is fairly traditional, but his father's name, Rem, was a Soviet-era acronym for Revolutsiya Engels Marx, a typical ideological naming convention of the 1920s-30s. This hints at the family's early political alignment and intellectual roots in Marxist-Leninist thinking. Andrei Belousov, early career: after graduating with honors in economics and cybernetics from Moscow State University in 1981, Andrei Belousov began his professional life during a time of significant ideological and economic transition in the Soviet Union. Academic and research work, 1980s-1990s. Researcher at the Central Economics and Mathematics Institute under the Russian Academy of Sciences, focused on macroeconomic modeling, forecasting, and transitional economy theory, essential as the Soviet Union began moving toward market reforms. His early work was influenced by systems analysis and cybernetics, bridging hard data with complex state planning needs. During the 1990s, he contributed to debates about Russia's post-Soviet economic reforms, warning about the dangers of rapid liberalization. Transition to government, 2000s. By 2000, Belousov was appointed advisor to the Prime Minister, Mikhail Kasyanov at the time. He began applying his academic theories to real-world economic policy. In 2006, he was promoted to Deputy Minister of Economic Development and Trade, marking his formal entry into high-level policy-making. He focused on strategic planning, macroeconomic forecasting, and long-term economic modernization. Advocated increased state participation in key sectors, including industry and infrastructure. Key characteristics in this period: Belousov gained a reputation as a quiet technocrat with strong forecasting skills, loyal but non-political, more concerned with data than ideology. A supporter of managed capitalism, allowing private markets under strong state oversight. This phase of his career laid the foundation for his later influence as a top economic advisor to Putin and eventually a cabinet minister. Would you like to continue into his 2012 appointment as Minister of Economic Development? Rise in government. Andrei Belousov. From the late 2000s onward, Andrei Belousov transitioned from a background economic advisor to one of the most influential figures in Russian economic policy making. His rise reflects his technocratic expertise, Loyalty to Vladimir Putin and belief in a strong, state-driven economy. Minister of Economic Development, 2012-2013, appointed in May 2012 by President Putin, shortly after Putin returned to the presidency, took over a ministry central to economic planning, investment, and business climate reform. Key initiatives: advocated increased state involvement in strategic sectors such as defense, energy, and manufacturing, supported industrial policy tools like subsidies, localization incentives, and import substitution. Tenure was brief, just over a year, but he left a mark with his skepticism of liberal market reforms and focus on state industrial coordination.
CRE 2. Presidential Economic Aid, 2013-2020. After leaving the ministry, Belousov became chief economic advisor to President Putin. In this behind-the-scenes but powerful role, he influenced long-term economic strategies and major industrial projects, designed
fiscal measures like windfall profit taxes on big corporations, drafted plans for technological sovereignty and national projects in infrastructure, healthcare and education, strongly supported state capitalism and sovereign development, often opposing liberal economists like former finance minister Alexei Kudrin, advocated tighter control over oligarchs' profits and reinvestment in domestic production, a policy he called mobilizing capitalism. Reputation. During this period, gained a reputation as loyal to Putin, trusted with strategic advice and sensitive projects, a cautious planner, preferring long-term thinking over short-term gains, and advocate for a wartime economic logic well before the Ukraine invasion, forecasting the need for self-sufficiency and strategic independence. 3. First Deputy Prime Minister, 2020-2024. In January 2020, appointed First Deputy PM under Mikhail Mishustin. Responsibilities included economic strategy, industrial policy, innovation, and investment programs. Acted as Prime Minister briefly in April-May 2020 when Mishustin fell ill with COVID-19. During his term, directed crisis response measures for the pandemic. Pushed digital transformation, domestic tech production, and support for Russian industry, helped expand military-industrial coordination after the 2022 invasion of Ukraine. Here's a detailed overview of Andrei Belousov's role as Russia's Minister of Defense, May 2024 present, principal mandate tasked with overhauling defense finances, procurement, and logistics to ensure efficiency, innovation, and corruption reduction. Putin's spokesperson emphasized the need for an MOD that is absolutely open to innovation and better integrated into Russia's overall economy, overseeing a defense budget near 6.77% of GDP, with his role resembling that of a comptroller and resource strategist, not a battlefield general. Appointment and context. Andrei Belousov as Russia's Minister of Defense. Date of appointment: May 12, 2024. On this day, Russian President Vladimir Putin made a surprise and highly symbolic move by replacing longtime Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu with Andrei Belousov, an economist with no military background. The decision marked one of the most significant shifts in Russia's military leadership since the start of the war in Ukraine. Why Belousov? Belousov was not chosen for battlefield experience, but for his reputation as a technocrat, his loyalty to Putin, and his deep understanding of economics. His appointment signaled that Russia's military priorities were shifting from battlefield leadership to efficient management of a war economy. The Kremlin sought to tackle corruption, inefficiency, and waste inside the Ministry of Defense. The government needed a civilian leader with financial expertise to integrate defense procurement into the broader national industrial plan. Kremlin. Spokesman Dmitry Peskov explained the choice by saying, "The person who manages the defense ministry must be open to innovation, to the introduction of advanced ideas, and understand the economy well." May 2024, Kremlin briefing. Background to the shakeup. Sergei Shoigu, who had served since 2012, was increasingly associated with scandals and stagnation in military procurement. Several high-ranking defense officials were arrested for corruption and embezzlement around the time of Belousov's appointment. The change was framed not as a demotion of Shoigu, who was made Secretary of the Security Council, but as a modernization push to optimize Russia's defense posture for a prolonged war effort. Strategic implications marked a paradigm shift from generals and Soviet-era commanders to economists and technocrats, aimed to institutionalize military-industrial integration, particularly in drone production, ammunition output, and logistics. Signaled that Russia anticipated a long-term conflict requiring sustained economic mobilization. Belousov's appointment stunned many Western analysts, but was seen internally as a pragmatic choice to strengthen Russia's military economy, not weaken its command. He became the first civilian to head Russia's defense ministry since the 1950s. Would you like to continue with the mandates and reforms he began right after taking office, early actions and reform moves? Andrei Belousov, May 2024 present. Within weeks of taking over as Russia's Minister of Defense, Andrei Belousov began reshaping the ministry with the urgency and precision of a wartime technocrat. His initial moves centered on rooting out corruption, overhauling procurement, and accelerating the militarization of Russia's economy for a long war. Anti-corruption crackdown, one of Belousov's first major initiatives, was to clean house, high profile. Arrests began almost immediately after his appointment, including top defense ministry officials and procurement officers.